Well, welcome everybody. This is RBN Television, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and this is my edition on Friday morning of Prime Property. My name is Joe Osamendi, as you know, but once again, if you watch my program, you know that's not the most important thing. The most important thing are these two gentlemen that I have with me today, because they're from Coldwell Banker, and they're going to talk about real estate, which is on everybody's mind right now because of the marketplace and everything. So welcome, Nicholas Alvini and James Ayer.
How you doing?
And you're Coldwell Banker team leader?
Yes.
And you're a Coldwell Banker agent, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, welcome to Prime Property.
Well, thanks for
Nice
having
to be
us.
here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. No, we had met before because of some things I'm dabbling in real estate, whatever. But the fact is that, why don't you describe the market for me? Because right now it's a market people that we haven't seen for a long time, correct?
Yes.
So what do you think about the marketplace?
Right now, it's crazy too because it's September, kids are going back to school and things like that. You would think it would start to slow down, and the market's still crazy. Values are still up. There's still tons and tons of buyers out there. People are still getting top dollar for their properties. So it really is a unique time. And it's definitely a great time if you're a seller, for sure.
So that brings up a good point, because it's a seller's market, which means I would think that it means that there's low inventory and there's a lot of demand. Is that correct?
Yes.
And now, you said something really important, Nick. You said that this is not going to end. It's basically you see this continuing for a while.
I could see it being this way for at least another year.
Another year.
Yeah, because the other thing with it, the other aspect of it is interest rates are still really low. So even though values are really high and people are it's perceived that people are overpaying for properties.
Right.
With interest rates being so low, it's really a balance. So that's, I think, and also another thing that's driving the market, which is a great thing.
Okay, now from a buyer standpoint, then it means that with the interest rates low and everything, you can probably buy a house for more money than you thought it was affordable. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So it kind of is a buyer-seller market. Then there's win-win on both sides if you have the right agent to work with.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's one thing else I want to bring up because I think that's important. I was discussing it with somebody that said, well, why don't you just put your house up by owner? Okay, because you don't have to pay commissions, whatever, and that seems to me to be a risky business. So why don't you tell people why people should go through a real estate agent? Because I think it's an important point.
The one thing I learned in this business is no two deals are the same.
Okay.
There are so many things that could pop up over the course of a deal. Anybody could put a sign on a lawn and put it up on maybe Zillow or something like that and get people to come through their property. How do you know if they're even pre-approved? How do you know if they have the right pre-approval? How do you know if they're working with the right lender? How do you know that you're going to get to the closing table? That's where we come in. We make sure that we're going to get you to the closing table. We're going to make sure we're going to navigate everything. There's so many issues that pop up during the course of a deal that the average person doesn't see, that we deal with every single day. So and that's where, in my opinion, that's where we do the most work, and that's where we provide the most value for our clients.
Okay, because your expertise is what people are buying.
Absolutely.
Because you navigate. If I have a brain tumor, I'm not going to go to a carpenter to take care of it.
Right.
Seriously, I'm going to go to a brain surgeon.
Yep.
And I think a real estate agent plays that same kind of role.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can make a mistake that costs you thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, and not out of ignorance more than anything else, not malice or anything. Now, you mentioned something I thought was interesting. You thought pre-approved. And there's also, I get notices all the time, pre-qualified, pre-approved or anything. Can you tell me the differences?
So the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification is the lender has already requested and received a lot of the buyer's income documents, tax documents, and things like that prior to even putting in an offer on a property.
Okay.
A pre-qualification is basically just kind of going on and, checking credit score and things like that. And that's kind of, hey, your DTI is, under what it needs to be. If it's FHA or conventional, 50, 42%, whatever. So that's the main difference. A pre-approval looks a lot better to a seller and to a listing agent because we know that they've already started to submit documents and they're definitely more ready to purchase quicker.
Another thing that brings up pre-approval and pre-qualifications, there's so much misinformation out there. I mean, I get letters every day from people. You're approved for this. You're pre-qualified for this. I mean, and those are important to understand because that does make a difference in what the buyer can buy, right? And if they've been pre-approved, I imagine the whole process of closing is going to go easier too.
Absolutely, because there's going to be less surprises. because like I said, the lender already kind of knows, what's needed, what they already have, really where they are financially to make sure that we're able to get to the table.
Okay. What are some of the pitfalls you can fall through in a real estate deal? Can you name a couple?
And not to be funny, but the main one is, a borrower possibly purchasing, making a big purchase. Furniture is one of the most common things, especially in this market, and especially with everything that had happened recently with the pandemic. And, trying to, a lot of people, they're upgrading. So they need more furniture. Maybe they have a second living room now. Maybe they want to upgrade their bedroom furniture, things like that. That's, they go into a store and they say, oh yeah, we're going to, finance this so that way, we can make payments $100 a month. Well, they don't realize that severely impacted their debt to income ratio and their credit scores, and that's usually the main one.
Really?
Obviously purchase, cars, things like that. That's the number one.
Okay.
The number two pitfall right now in this market, because it's such a competitive market, a lot of buyers are waiving appraisals. Appraisal contingencies, waiving home inspection contingencies, essentially taking a property as is. And then when they do a home inspection or they do an appraisal, issues pop up. And now they're kind of stuck because they agree to this contract that says we're not going to ask for any home inspection repairs, we're going to waive the appraisal, and then there's issues and now they're kind of stuck in a contract. So that's usually kind of where it gets really hairy.
Okay. What kind of issues could come up?
Well, just as a for instance, if you're an FHA buyer, and no, FHA does not mean first-time home buyer. That's a misnomer. I wanted to throw that out.
Okay, good.
It stands for Federal Housing Administration. But an FHA buyer, because it's a government-backed loan, they're a little bit more stringent on the appraisal process.
Okay.
They look for a lot more. The smallest thing could end up popping up and impacting that property.
Really?
And they're usually the deals that tend to fall apart a lot easier than a conventional buyer.
Okay.
A little thing, scraping, having to scrape some paint. Like I said, minor things, windows not opening and closing. These minor things that sellers don't feel like they have to do because, it's a hot market and it's a seller's market. They don't feel like they have to make any repairs, and that tends to, essentially have a deal fall apart.
Right, okay. Speaking of, you said it doesn't stand for first-time home buyers. Isn't there a first-time home buyers program in New Jersey that's available?
Absolutely.
Want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So it is the New Jersey, the first-time home buyer grant. It's a $10,000 grant. It is completely, it looks like a second mortgage, but you don't have to actually pay anything back if you live in that house for 5 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
So it's actually a great tool for first-time buyers. If they maybe they have the credit score, they have the income, they have the job history, but they don't have the cash. It's a great tool to have, and it's something that a lot of people are taking advantage of.
Okay, let's talk about credit scores for a second. Because a lot of people think, higher the credit score, the easier it is to get a mortgage, whatever. So give me the parameters of a credit score. How low can you go, for instance?
Well, there are lenders that have products that you can actually go down into the low to mid 500s.
Really?
Depending on how much you're willing to put down.
Okay.
The industry standard is somewhere between 580 and 600.
Oh, okay.
For an FHA loan. Conventional is 620 and over.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, you could be mid 500s, and if you have cash in the bank and you have reserves, you may actually be able to get a mortgage.
In this market, is there a lot of cash sales?
More than I've ever seen.
Okay.
More than I've ever seen in my career.
Because that seemed to me would take away a lot of the red tape and closing and stuff like that. It might be a lot easier. So somebody would opt to take less money on a cash sale than they would going through a mortgage. Is that correct?
Interestingly, I've noticed that that's actually not what's been going on. A lot of sellers are saying, okay, if you educate your client and you educate your seller and you make them fully aware of the differences between an FHA offer, a conventional offer, a cash offer, things like that,
okay,
they're able to also do their own research and kind of see, for themselves and make their decision whether they want to take maybe a lower cash offer or an offer that's a conventional loan for more money.
Okay.
And sellers are leaning a little bit more towards taking a little bit more money on a conventional deal than a cash deal.
Well, why do you think that is?
I think it just comes down to, attacking, striking while
Okay.
striking while it's hot and kind of going that route. This isn't really the market to take the lower cash deal
Right,
when
right.
you can make a few extra dollars on a conventional deal that it's pretty safe that it's going to appraise and close on time.
So have you ever seen a market like this before?
Never.
Never. No, I'm amazed. I do this show. I always kind of say, like, the commercial does. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a doctor that I play a doctor on television. I'm not a real estate agent, but I play one on television. So it's kind of the same thing. So I always rely on your expertise because I learn a lot on this thing. So this market, from everybody I've ever interviewed, always says it's crazy. They've never seen anything about it. Nick, you said it's going to last another year, which is I think remarkably interesting, because and then what happens then? Now, you think this market's going to kind of gradually go down, or let's say we adjust, not go down. That's not the right term, but we adjust. Do you think that's going to happen, or is that going to be a full swoop down?
There's not going to be a crash.
There won't be a crash.
There will
right?
not be a
in
crash,
2008.
not like there was, what is it now, 13 years ago?
2008, right?
Yeah, 2008. Two completely different sets of circumstances.
Okay.
Because interest rates are so low, people are still going to be able to afford their property.
Okay.
Is it going to be worth as much in a year from now than it is now? Maybe, maybe not. But there's not going to be that rush of foreclosures or anything like that. It's not going to be anything like that. Is it going to correct? Probably, and it probably should. But I think it's going to be a little bit more of a gradual thing.
Okay, so now that makes market more sensible, because then people can have a lot more time to make decisions. Because buying or selling a home is a big decision.
Absolutely. Biggest decision that a lot of people are ever going to make.
Right. I would think other than getting married and having a child, it's right up there.
Yeah.
The biggest financial decision, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Got to pay a couple bills, and then we'll be right back with Nick and Jim. Stick around.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Well, good morning again, everyone. This is Prime Property. It's Friday morning, RBN Television, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I'm Joe Osamendi, your host. But again, and I emphasize that's not the most important thing about this program. Most important thing about this program is these two guys I have sitting right next to me. That's Nicholas Alvini and James Ayers.
Yes.
Coldwell Banker, you're a team leader, you're a real estate agent, and welcome again to Prime Property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of people get up and they say, I want to be a cowboy when I was a kid. I want to be a fire chief or something. What was the influence to get you guys into the real estate business?
So for me, it's interesting. When I was a kid, I grew up in South Philly.
Okay.
I used to see there was a real estate agent that he's pretty popular and still is, that he would go around the neighborhood and just talk to people. Just conversation, just, making friends, things like that. And then you would see his signs popping up all over the place. And you start to think, man, this guy really knows what he's doing. He's really popular. He's really making it big. I mean, he is cornering this market. And that was always interesting to me, because in my mind, he was almost kind of locally famous. He walked down the street and everybody knew who he was. And that was intriguing to me. And that's really what kind of turned me on to it.
Kind of like Cheers without the beers.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Obviously I had, the other dreams. I wanted to be a professional hockey player, things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, looking at it more realistically, I kind of knew that, if he could do it and he's doing it really well, I know that I could definitely do it and do it really well.
Okay. Now, you're relatively new, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What advice would you have for somebody that wants to get in the real estate business right now?
Right off the bat, you have to look for somebody that already knows what they're doing, a mentor. And I lucked out. Like, I love everything about it. He's there for me whenever I need him. He helps me out whenever I need it. Because you're not going to know everything starting out in this business.
Sure.
Don't fool yourself and think you are. You're going to need that mentor. And I couldn't have got luckier. This is everything. He's my lifeline. Pretty much.
Now, that's very important because, a lot of people don't plan to fail, but they fail to plan. And I think that's important when you're talking about mentors because anybody can get a license, I imagine. As long as you pass the test and stuff, you can get a license. But that does not necessarily set you up for success.
No. And if you don't get a mentor, I think a lot of times you're setting yourself up for failure.
Okay.
Because there's so many little parts of this business. If you make that one little mistake, you might be getting yourself in a little bit of trouble, So it's nice to have that backup to be like, I'll call him up, Nick, is this okay? You sure if I can do this? And he'll tell me, and then I know where to go from there. But if I didn't have that, I'd be a little lost, So I appreciate him more than he knows. Like, it's great.
Have you always been in real estate, Jim? Or did you kind of stumble into this after another type of career or anything?
So I'll give you the story. So my wife and I had our child, our second child, and I was working for the post office, and I was just miserable.
Okay.
I was working, 50, 60 hours a week. I was coming home. I was just too tired to want to do anything. And, I realized that I needed a change.
Okay.
And real estate was always something that was in the back of my mind, that it was something that I wanted to do. And I'll be the first to admit, I was one of the people that said, man, I really love the freedom, the schedule freedom. I could pick my own schedule. I could, if I don't want to work on a Saturday or a Sunday, I don't have to, and things like that. So that freedom was what originally drove me to want to get into this career. But I was also very passionate about it. Like I always followed it. I always watched all the real estate shows. I was always on, those real estate websites, keeping up with things that were going on. And I just realized that there was, if I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? I'm a big believer in follow your dreams, do what makes you happy. We only get a certain amount of time on this earth,
right.
So why spend it doing something that you are miserable? And here we are.
That's great advice, by the way, too. And you're a wealth of information. I mean, I do this show, and I really find it commendable that you answer things that are just right on spot, which is great. So you have to do what you love, as you said. Now, in the real estate market now, with everything that's going on, what about competition? I mean, let's talk about competition. I would think the competition must be fierce right now. Is that right?
There's tons of competition, and that's where having the right real estate agent really comes into play.
Okay.
Because we're able to help you really navigate and kind of sort through everything that's going on right now.
Okay.
And that's very valuable. Anybody could just unlock a door and open a lockbox and take you in and show you the pretty countertops and
right.
The stainless steel appliances and things like that. Where we come in is we maybe show you the things that you probably aren't looking for, as well as structuring an offer and making sure that you're going to get to the table and get your client that house, and just make sure that you did the best possible job for your client, whether it's a buyer or a seller.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about timing. Is the real estate market good any time, or is it like, I've always thought that, either buy before school opens up, a lot of people want to do that, springtime is good, end of the year is kind of so-so, but this market's different. So do you see any difference in any time of the year when you're selling or buying?
Up until the pandemic, and I'm going to preface it by saying when the pandemic hit, us, we real estate agents, we didn't know what was going to happen.
Okay.
We didn't know if things were just going to completely shut down. It turns out that it was kind of the complete opposite, and the agents that were really willing to work and still be out there and do everything that they need to do through the pandemic, they were going to do really well, and that's pretty much what happened for a lot of us. But you know, it's just a very interesting time. It used to be, you know, if you were a buyer, the best possible time to probably buy a property would be in the off time, you know, that
Okay.
which we would typically be coming up to anytime like right after Halloween, all the way through maybe the end of January. Usually the Super Bowl time is
Okay.
usually that, you know, that period where if you're a buyer and you want a really, really good deal, that's the time to go out and look for it. The last year and a half, 2 years, it hasn't been that way. It's just been a pretty hot competitive market, just completely straight through.
Really? So there aren't those peaks and valleys on it. Really kind of flattened out.
It used to be that the spring market would bring everybody out, and that's where the most competition would be, that April through, call it June or July, because people want to be, you know, at the latest settled into their new home before
Right.
the new school year hits.
Right.
But there's just so many people out all year round right now that there's really no, you know, there's no great time for a buyer to zero in and say, I'm going to get a great deal on a house in December. So it just doesn't, it's just not what's happening right now.
Now, when the pandemic hit, did that affect people not wanting people in their homes for like open houses
Yes.
or something? Was that a big factor?
There was a lot of that. And one of the interesting things that came out of it, which I'm a big fan of, is, you know, we agents had to get really used to and become really good at, you know, video marketing. You know, getting really good videos of properties because there's a lot of virtual showings and things like that going on.
Right.
So we had to, just by default, become really good at that.
Okay.
And finding the right companies, you know, to make sure that those properties are still being properly marketed and they still look good compared to other properties, because there were a lot of sellers and a lot of buyers that were, you know, very hesitant towards, you know, either going into other people's houses or having people come into their houses, which is completely understandable.
Okay. I want to touch on staging for a second, because, you know, now just as a novice, I would say that to me there's two ways to look at this. You know, staging looks beautiful when you see that, but if you see an empty house, for instance, does it go through the buyer's mind as they actually say, well, I can see my furniture here, I can see this, I can see that. Is there any difference, in your opinion, whether you have an empty house or a full house when you're doing this?
It's very subjective,
That's right. Yep.
because, you know, you're going to have those buyers that have that ability to be able to walk into an empty property that doesn't have any furniture and be able to say, oh, I could fit my sectional here,
Right.
my TV will go there, those types of things. And then there's also the buyers that, you know, just for whatever reason, don't have that ability to be able to do that. So what I like to do to, you know, to counterbalance that is, if we don't want to physically have furniture in the property, you could do like a virtual staging.
Okay.
So that way, you know, a buyer can see it, you know, at least, you know, if nothing else, on a piece of paper, a TV screen, computer screen, phone screen, to be able to really visualize, you know, how the property is going to look with furniture in there and things like that.
That seems to be the perfect solution, because an empty house seems so much. I've been in both houses empty, and sometimes the furniture even turns people off. You know, because they oversized furniture, it makes a room look smaller. But an empty house to me seems to look, especially new construction, it seems to be like gigantic. It seems to open it up a lot more. It seems to be that the place looks bigger. Is that right, or is that just my misperception?
Yeah, well, I had a showing last night, and the people I was with, showing the house to, they would have rathered had no furniture in there because it was
Really?
fully furnished, because they wanted to do exactly what he just said. They wanted to visualize
Okay.
what they wanted to do with
Right.
it, and sometimes it's hard for people to grasp that if it's filled. You know what I mean? Like if it's,
Oh yeah, it works both ways.
yeah, it can
Because
go
if
either
they're,
way.
you know, maybe if a property's over furnished, or maybe the furniture is possibly maybe a little bit dated,
Right.
you know, it makes it a little bit more difficult for a buyer to visualize. So like I said, it's very subjective. It works both ways. So you as a real estate agent have to be able to have a plan in place to, you know, make sure that you're able to make everyone happy. And kind of what you said, the virtual staging option, which I'm a huge proponent of, is definitely one of those options.
Well, you know, the internet's really. You've been in real estate for a while. What impact has the internet had on the whole marketplace?
The internet has been a blessing and a curse
Okay.
for real estate agents.
Right.
You know, not to get into too much detail, but in a way it's great because, you know, prospective buyers and prospective sellers are really able to do their own research before they start interviewing agents. So you go into it and they already have an idea, you know, what they think their property's worth, or how much they're willing to spend and how much they're willing to put down on a mortgage, you know, things like that. But at the same time, there's a lot of misinformation out there
Okay.
that we have to, you know, as agents overcome when we, you know, possibly sit down with the seller to speak with them about, you know, what their home is worth and what we're going to be able to do for them. So, you know, it kind of works both ways.
Okay. You know, another thing comes up, like some of those sites like Realtor.com and Zillow and stuff, are they accurate? Are they a good barometer for values or not?
If you told me that I had to choose one or the other, I would direct people more to Realtor.com. Their information is more up to date.
Okay.
Their valuations are a little bit more accurate. But really, at the end of the day, if you want, you know, the real numbers, call your local real estate agent.
Yeah, because they're like having boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. That's the way I would describe it, I would think. Because you're right. I mean, those agencies, I don't think they have people physically here or any place. They're just taking data, I imagine,
Absolutely.
from different things. So that brings us into the point about comps. Because I think comps are important too. And I think a good real estate agent, in my opinion, can bring those comps up and show you a real value of your home, rather than just take some kind of wild guess. Now, do you run into a lot of times where the seller would think that their property is worth more than it is?
I would say I run into that if I go on 10 what we call listing appointments, 7 or 8 of those listing appointments, the seller has an idea that's maybe a little bit more pie in the sky than it really should be. Oh, yeah.
That high of a percentage.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's always been that way. It's not because of the market that we're in. It's just kind of always been that way.
Okay.
But you will get you'll get the occasional seller that, I shouldn't say the occasional, but you'll get quite a few sellers that when you go there and, you know, I love to ask the question, what do you think your house is worth? Mm-hmm. I just love to ask the question. And you do get those people every once in a while that when they answer the question, you're kind of shocked.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that definitely happens. But it is our job to, whether they are undervaluing or overvaluing their property, it is our job to show them the data that really backs up what we perceive the market to be telling us right now. At the end of the day, a buyer's only willing to pay what they're willing to pay on a property.
Yeah,
that's what the property's worth.
Exactly.
Regardless of what we say, regardless of what Zillow's estimate says, regardless of what your next door neighbor tells you that the house should be worth, or your parents or your kids, things like that. That's really what drives it. And that's directly where the comps come from, because that's what people are paying for those houses in the area around you.
So that's a very interesting point, because out west, for instance, in San Francisco, you can't afford houses that would be really affordable here, let's say, because they're just inflated. Yeah. You know, I can't believe that we're at the point of my program right now where I'm going to have you look in that camera right there and tell people how they can reach you and who should call you.
I could be reached anytime. My cell phone number is 856-261-4240. My name is Nick Alvini. I am the team leader of the Alvini Group at Coldwell Banker Realty in Haddonfield. I am licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, so I can help you with any of your real estate needs in the Philly area, South Jersey, the Shore. We go all over the place, and we're ready to help you.
Jim?
I'm Jim Ayers, part of the Alvini Group. You can reach me at 856-343-8888 anytime, 24/7. I'm licensed in New Jersey. I'm willing to help you with anything you need. So just give me a call anytime.
But take them up on that, but don't call them at 3 in the morning. I don't recommend that.
You can call me 3 in the morning. It's okay.
Jim's a night owl.
I'm a night owl.
Jim's a night owl.
I'm already
He's
up.
probably going to answer.
Okay, good. Gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure having you guys aboard.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure to be here.
I do this show and I really learn so much from people like yourselves, because it is a market that's fascinating, whether you're a buyer or seller, and there are so many pitfalls you can fall through. And I think that people that watch the show that have ideas that, you know, like they can sell by the owner and all kinds of things like that, you guys make it so important to make major decisions based on people's expertise. And anybody that's either buying or selling a house, I really encourage them to call you guys, because I think they'd be in good hands, and you're going to give them a really good estimate of what's going to help sell their house and what they can do to get it off the market as fast as possible. Or on the other hand, what things to avoid as a buyer and what things that will help you buy the house that you really want.
Yep. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for having us.
Oh,
we
my
really
pleasure.
Really
appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Good, and thank you folks for joining us. I will be back on next Prime Property, 9:30 Friday morning, RBN Television. And if you're on the market for buying or selling a house, these two guys.
Yep.
Take care, guys. See you next week.